Yo guys, welcome to the video. This is Josh or Milky, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a tier list on the heroes for Torchlight. Now, I've never done this before, and for good reason. It opens myself up to a bit of ridicule, but why not? It's a bit of fun, right? We've got a day to go before the season starts. Let's have a look. Bear in mind, this is just my opinion based on, my experience with the characters or my understanding of them. It is not in regards to their ability to cap the dummy on perfect gear. This is just in a level 1 to like early time mark 8, maybe how easy it is for them to push into further time mark 8s. League start environment, okay? So I've given the disclaimers a little bit, but we'll get straight into it. Obviously, my opinion on how good something is at League start doesn't necessarily reflect how good it is in general. The same way, if something has a good build, it's not necessarily a good hero. That kind of happens in Torchlight a lot, where a character may have a good build, but it's a bad hero. There we go. All right, everything's out of the way. I've surely not going to get any criticism now, right? So let's start with Bing. Bing is, in my opinion, the first member in the S tier of League starters, and the reason for that is he's got a phenomenal League start build, being Arrow, Einhajar sentries. You just throw them down, they get summoned, they kill everything for you while you just blurry steps through all the mobs. It's incredibly fast. You can get yourself up to time mark 7, start farming FEs. You can even get to time mark 8 and do the same. He's even good at maybe like bossing content or Path of the Brave content. He's kind of like an all-roundy kind of character. And if you do wish to take this the entire distance and just min-max it to the moon, he's got that capability as well. So not necessarily just good at farming yourself some Flame Elementium to transition or to further improve your character. So Bing, definitely up there for me. Now Lethal Flash, this is one that's a bit more difficult to do because Lethal Flash, I'd say, has some of the strongest potential in the mid-game, but he is very reliant on getting wiping silver bullets, getting Atinas, maybe even getting Heart of the Ethereal Realm, and that's and even in some situations an activation medium to take advantage of his desperate measures. So you also need to get the desperate measures, either prototype memory or regular memory. So a lot of things you need to check off before Lethal Flash really starts to pop off. And now, of course, you can't get those legendary memories and relics until level 80, and this, in my opinion, diminishes how good he is as a first character League starter. But if you're willing to kind of grind through that, he's easily an S tier. But for the reasons that I've mentioned, I am going to put him a bit lower. Although his builds like Corrosive Shot, Blazing Bullet, Whirlwind Blade are absolutely brilliant. So this is kind of a case-by-case basis on how you feel about League starters. For me, it's a bit more annoying to have to go out and rely on dropping items early on when I just want to be blasting, So for me, it would be like a B tier, maybe even a low A. I'll be generous and put him as a low A. But for you, he could easily be an S tier if you're willing to put in that initial grind and maybe fall behind a little bit, only to catch up later on when your character is extremely powerful. Now, the Zealot of War, this character to me suffers a similar fate. He's very reliant on memories and relics, not just for power, but to feel less clunky. I feel like this character is going to feel extremely clunky, especially with the reverse knockback scaling you're going to have to incorporate into it if you're not playing something like a Ring of Blades, and you don't have your activation medium, because this character kind of wants to be moving at all times in order to reduce the overheated stacks to be in line with your heat up stacks, so you're not exceeding. Now, if you do want to go the burning red version of the build, which is where you kind of say, fuck it, I don't care if my overheated stacks go to the moon, then it doesn't matter as much, but then your damage is very much focused into 10 seconds out of maybe a 30-second window, which can be annoying to line up, especially when you just want to be blasting maps. So it could feel fine if it just happens that you go into a map and by the time you get to a boss, you're in burning red, but as you go further and further into the game, there are going to be situations where you really want that extra damage more often. So I think this character is going to be exceptional in the end game. It's just Torchlight's way, right? It's the new hero. It's on the battle pass. It's probably going to be insane. But for League start specifically, I'm not sold on it. I think it might feel a bit clunky before you get those hero memories and relics, specifically the ones that make it that you start with your max stacks of heat up. You need knockback reverse. You maybe even want the movement speed scaling your knockback speed. You kind of want the prototype memory as well. There's a lot that you need to get this guy off the ground. So I'm going to put him in B tier just for League start. Now, later on, I think Ring of Blades or just some activation medium stuff. Focus Shot looks really good on him with further scaling, with like Ghost Slaughters and everything. Even just Blazing Bullet with some maybe Tenacity stacking with the Divine Ember Helmet. Well, all four of those things could be absolutely great on this guy, and I really see them being that way. But for League start, B tier. Carino, I mean, I do know. He's a C tier. As I say, there are definitely builds that you can do on Rog. A lot of people love Thunderbolt Overload, but you need a few things to get that going. And I just think he is one of the weaker heroes, at least initially. If we're measuring a Rog versus a Bing, yeah, I mean, it does show that the balance is in a pretty decent state because Rog isn't, like, worlds apart in terms of his ability to get going early on, but just in terms of what he's able to do on, like, scraps is a lot lower. So I'm going to put Rog in C tier, and he's probably going to be one of the few in there. Now, Cat Eye Erica number 2. She got a substantial nerf, and it's probably going to feel not that great to play. It's a bit hard to get up and running with the Chain Lightning builds or maybe the Ground Shaker builds. You do need some very specific gear. Thunder Spike did get a big buff, but does that make up for the lack of damage you're going to be getting from Feline Figures and the reduced amount of shocks you're going to settle? Probably not. I think they may have overdone it a little bit on Erica. She may be suffering from the sins of last season's Erica, and so for that reason she's going to go in C tier for me. I'm sorry, all you Cat Eye Erica 2 mains. I know everyone loved that build last league, but it might be time to try something different this league, at least for the time being. Cat Eye Erica 2, obviously Ghostblade Einherjar is the go-to league star on this character. Very, very strong, especially if you want to get into like Path of the Brave and stuff like that, but it is kind of annoying to map with. It doesn't feel great early on, and with the reduction to explosion radius, it did rely quite heavily on explosion radius in order to get that comfortable clear. It does feel nice to whirl around super fast, and I know a lot of people love this build. I've never personally played it, so realistically I should put this in, I don't know, but from what I've seen and heard, this is probably a low B. I'll put it in, I don't know. I don't want to be like rude to the people that play it. I don't know, but from what I've seen and heard and my experience of people telling me about them league starting in the past, it's probably lower down than a Carino, Lethal Flash, or a Bing. Now, Frostbitten Gemma, A tier for me. Absolutely. She did get a bit of, well, I say a bit of nerf, quite a big nerf. The biggest modifier for this build was the additional damage to frozen enemies. This got reduced heavily, so you've lost quite a lot of damage there. However, it's just a very comfortable playstyle. You don't really have to worry about dying. Your Legendary Relic is now a prototype if you want to use that. There were some big changes, obviously, to Legendaries, and there are some really, really good items for Reap, especially Reap Purification. I'll go and find it here. We've got the new Ring Traceless Pain. This previously did a Reap on a, like, 5... like, you could only Reap once, but it reaped a massive Reap. Now you reap every 1.5 seconds, provided you can reduce and gain affliction rating. And you also gain a massive amount of skill duration, which, of course, the way this works with terrors and channeled skills ends up meaning this is going to be very strong. So Gemma goes there. Now, for the same reason, I'm going to put Flame of Pleasure Gemma in A tier. Now, there is some debate on how the Path of Flame nerf affects this character, whether or not the additional damage is applied to the entire duration of the cast or just the burst of damage at the end. I personally do not know the answer to this. If it does work on the burst of damage at the end, it's probably going to be closer to a C tier. You are obviously going to have to level, at least initially, as melee, as this character does not gain access to wands, staffs, or anything like that early on, unless you're willing to mule it, but it's kind of annoying, right? So yeah, if it works as it's suspected to work, definitely an A tier, because Reap Purification is just that strong. And I might as well, while we're at it, grab Yoga. I'd probably say Yoga is my the safest of these three. Flame of Pleasure Gemma could very well be stronger, but Yoga, I would say, is the safest with mind control. Same reasons with Reap Purification, just an incredibly strong archetype. Gemma 1, I don't know. Honestly, I'm looking at the patch notes, she seems around the same, but again, needs a little bit to get going. Not sure what build you would go on Gemma 1 early on. You can level as like Split Fireball, you can level as Flame Jet, you can go the double Terror build, which is pretty strong, but I simply don't know for this hero in terms of like those late Time Mark 7, early Time Mark 8 situations. I couldn't tell you. There's too much up in the air on this one. Iris, I don't know. I'd have to ask Zen on this one. Iris got some good changes that make her kind of easier to play early on. You get access to the better memories via the prototype system, so she may be able to go Frost Iris much earlier and get those big cooldowns, that big skill effect. So she could very well be like in A or S tier, but that's not my wheelhouse. I don't play minions. Saying that, I'm going to put Charge Call in S tier as a league start specifically. Now, the reduction, the change, sorry, that makes it so your minions count towards your total summon minions could very well be a massive nerf to his end game capability. But early on, I don't think you'll be feeling the effects of this at all. and it will be very, very strong, at least as your initial character. Now, will it affect your end game, reaching the new 5 trillion dummy cap? Absolutely. I think that's where we'll see the effect of that buff. So they've kind of pulled down his top end, but very much raised the floor, and he got some substantial buffs. So I think Charge Calling is an exceptionally good league starter. Order Calling, I do not know. Again, Minions, not really for me. This is the only one I kind of really know about because I've been talking to a lot of people about it because he looks so good. Order Calling, I can't say the same for. Now, Seething's an interesting one because he did get some changes. Obviously, a lot of people used and abused the chest mod that gave you unarmed flat damage based on your strength. Obviously, strength stacking did get quite a substantial change where the one strength gives you 0.5% additional damage for any skill that is aligned with strength or strength dex, and you know. So could be very, very good. Also, the memory now works if you put it in the first slot rather than the 5th, so you'll be able to get that online much earlier. I think Seething is honestly probably a low A. Because you can get him going so early now with the prototype memory. I think a lot of people didn't really do this last league, but just going a basic berserking blade, maybe you even go like lightning damage and you go dex stacking because obviously it has dex in the dex is on the berserking blade skill. You could even get that going and just farm up an absolute storm. He's so fast. If you can get some early candles for the movement speed and skill area and all that, you could just farm up a storm on this guy. Pretty close to train if you get him online. And speaking of train, here he is. Now, am I going to be biased? Of course I'm going to be biased. Get this guy in S tier. Now, he's going to definitely suffer the same problems he did in the past, I imagine, where his damage just isn't on par with the 5 trillion damage dealers of the world. Train is fairly well reined in, but what you trade off for that damage is a playstyle that just is unmatched. You just get to press right click if you have the mode enabled where you press right click once and your Savage Charge just goes throughout the entire map. There's really not much better for farming other than maybe like Mind Control. Path of Flame is going to feel pretty good too. It's a very hands-off approach to farming, and you know, you get those big explosions. It's all cool. But could definitely suffer on the high end for damage. Hopefully not with all the changes to strength and now physical and melee skill levels affecting burst. You get that 12% additional damage per level. It could be very, very huge. And obviously Rayhan does have some strength stacking scaling on his memories as well. So what route people are going to go with this, I do not know. I've been trying to do the math on it, but I've been super busy with the Maxroll stuff. Maybe I'll get time today to finish off some kind of calculator. I was making one in Excel. We'll see. But in terms of getting going, at least, absolutely fine. End game, not too sure. Probably still suffers the same as he did before. I was speaking to Palstron about this, and I also saw him going over on his stream, and it seems like this character got about a 30% reduction in damage. And she also possibly can no longer use Varial Snicker. Now, early on, you are likely to get a Varial Snicker at this point now. The way that they've changed the legendaries, you are quite likely to get those build-enabling items quite early, which is great for things like Rosa that rely heavily on a single item to get going, especially with things like Haunting A-Bomb. I know people like that, Chain Lightning, any kind of cast when channeling build if you can get the activation mediums. But all these things that I'm describing require a little bit of setup. So I'm going to put Rosa in B tier, as she does require a little bit to get going. But even up until that point, even if you just want to go some basic ground shaker, explode kind of build, she's going to be absolutely fine for farming T7s on that until you figure out what you want to do. Or you just get the money together to get those like high-end activation mediums and whatnot. Now, Thea, damn. Blessing stacking early on is quite difficult because it's quite an expensive archetype, and these two characters obviously benefit heavily from stacking blessings. So for League Start, they are typically the two most expensive characters to get going in terms of their requirements to really pop off. Also, they don't kind of, like, at least Thea 1 has kind of an archetype with the snapshot and stuff, and that did get buffed. And I would imagine that makes her somewhere around a B tier if you want to go like Thundercloud or something like that. But for Thea 2, she just doesn't really have a home right now. Everyone else kind of does what she does, and in some ways does it better. So whether or not she's going to be back on the menu with the new Spellburst stuff, you could go some Spellburst activation medium like Icy Ring like you would in the past. Probably not Icy Ring because they nerfed that specifically for triggering. But she could definitely be on the menu for some kind of other spell to be used that way. But I would have her, unfortunately, low down for those reasons. Yoga 1, I'd have in A tier. Probably the best cheap spellcaster that isn't a Path of Flame abuser or like a Mind Controller or a Train or something like that. You get automated spell burst via your clone, and you can just run on through the map. And he's very, very easy to get off the ground and get going. That will be my tier list. Very rambly, a lot of words, tripped over them quite often. But I hope you managed to stomach me waffling away for, what was this, 15 minutes. Well, that's 15 minutes less until league start. You've managed to sit yourself through this video. I hope to see that. I'll be live 4th/5th of July, depending on what side of the globe you're on. I'll see you there.